Hey, and welcome back. So as I've mentioned before, my responsibilities as a recruiter go beyond than what's simply required for the job. In order to continue to remain successful in the fast-paced, constantly evolving job market, I also have to keep a close eye on breaking news and upcoming trends, especially in my industry. This has become even more important during the pandemic because it forced drastic changes on the already turbulent way we do business. I shouldn't even have to mention the millions of jobs lost and the overall switch to remote work that occurred in most industries as we adjusted to the lockdowns at the beginning of the pandemic. Luckily, as I covered in a few of my most recent videos, we seem to be emerging out of the pandemic era into a new world of jobs and employment. It's now clear that many roles can be performed and organizations maintained entirely from home. But as you probably know, things are still very much up in the air. Employees and their employers are still working out how to move forward now that it's safe to meet in person again. As you might have expected, many workers prefer the work-from-home model. Now that it's been demonstrated a lot of work can be done remotely, they are now advocating for a permanent move to hybrid or entirely remote work situations. Some, on the other hand, prefer the intimacy of an in-person interaction. Additionally though, managers and executives certainly feel that they have a greater deal of awareness and control over their employees. Some are advocating for a partial or even a full return to the traditional in-person work that was prevalent prior to the pandemic. But as you can imagine, this ongoing debate has had some effect on the job market, and many figures on both sides have weighed in. In this video, we're going to actually cover a recent story about Apple CEO Tim Cook's thoughts on the issue and how it compares to other thoughts on the matter. But before we get started, as always, remember to like this video, subscribe, click that bell, it really means a lot. Every year, Time magazine puts out a feature called Time 100 that spotlights 100 of the most influential people in the world. This year, speaking at the Time 100 Summit on June 7th, 2022, Apple CEO Tim Cook was asked about the biggest changes taking place in the workplace now. Especially as a result of the pandemic, perhaps unsurprisingly his answer was remote work. As he elaborated though, it became clear that Cook isn't yet sold on remote work's long-term effectiveness, the mother of all experiments. On the success of Apple's remote work efforts, Cook had this to say, quote, "We're running the mother of all experiments because we don't know. We're running a pilot and trying to find a place that makes the best of both of these worlds," end quote. He elaborated that he prefers in-person work for its serendipity and that while virtual conferences are effective, they're very different from a physical meeting. He emphasized his view that a hybrid of both in-person and remote work that utilizes the advantages of both formats is likely the most effective way forward, and stated that the current model is likely unsustainable for a lot of companies in the long run. He said, quote, "We could be the first to say the starting point is likely wrong and it will take tweaks," end quote. But when asked about the potential of virtual and augmented reality technology for use of bridging the in-person/remote gap in the workplace, he stated that, quote, "stands a chance of enhancing our conversation, of enhancing our connection instead of replacing it," end quote. But he would not elaborate further on Apple's plans for the technology specifically. These statements come only a few weeks after Apple announced their return to work plan, which stirred up some controversy, both internally and externally. The results of Apple's revised policies. As an executive, it likely shouldn't be a huge surprise that Cook is hesitant to commit to a fully remote work model. Many other executives and higher-ups like managers feel similarly. Certainly, the switch to remote work hasn't been easy or cheap for a lot of companies, and many feel that there are some disadvantages to the model. In an effort to begin the return to work process, Apple announced that they would be requiring employees to go into the office once a week, eventually moving to 2 to 3 days a week in person. Many employees were unhappy with this mandate, and some banded together to pen an open letter to Apple executives that denounced the move and advocated for a fully remote plan moving forward. Here's a short excerpt that explains the reasoning. Quote, "Office-bound work is a technology from the last century, from the era before ubiquitous video call capable internet and everyone being on the same internal chat application. But the future is about connecting when it makes sense, with people who have no relevant input, no matter where they are based. Without the inclusivity that flexibility brings, many of us feel we have to choose between either a combination of our families, our well-being, and being empowered to do our best work, or being a part of Apple," end quote. The biggest blow came when Ian Goodfellow, director of Apple's machine learning team, announced that he was resigning as a result of the move away from remote and back to in-person work. Explaining his decision to the Verge reporter, Goodfellow had this to say, quote, "I believe strongly that more flexibility would have been the best policy for my team," end quote. Following this, Bloomberg reported that an internal memo quietly informed employees they would be delaying the change, which was planned for May 23rd, 2022 to an indefinite date. So what is the future of remote work? While Apple's attempts to return to in-person work drew ire both internally and externally, Tim Cook's comments at the Time 100 Summit are harder to take issue with regardless of which side of the issue you stand. Remote work is still in its infancy and we're still working out the kinks. There's a good chance that Cook is right. In the future, remote work may look very different from how it does now. But that said, it's highly unlikely we'll see it go away. Now that workers have seen remote work is possible and indeed effective, they aren't letting it go. The so-called Great Resignation is a direct result of this. Employees are leaving their positions in search of better, more flexible roles. Certainly, it looks like employers are going to have to contend with this if they want to remain competitive. At this point, it seems unwise to attempt to return to a fully in-person model. So do you have any thoughts on remote work or on Apple's policies or how they're handling everything? Do you have anything else to add on the conversation? I'd love to hear from you below. If you like this video or want to see more like it, feel free to like, subscribe, click that bell. It really means a lot. Feel free to also follow me at Preston_Park, as I try my best to also post daily. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.